Welcome to the Engaged Citizen Summit from Concerned Citizen to Local Leader, a summit designed to help concerned Americans move beyond frustration and confusion into clear, responsible, and meaningful action where they live. This is your go to practical guide to understanding the issues shaping our communities, identifying where real power lives, and becoming steadier, more informed, and more effective in civic life. I'm your host, Stephanie Hope, founder of The Hope Factor, a civic innovation and local leadership development platform helping grassroots citizens become the local operators, community builders, and trusted voices that their communities need. Through each conversation, we're helping you see the issue more clearly, understand the responsibility right in front of you, and identify the next practical step that you can take with direction, discipline, and momentum. My guest today is Charity Lynch, Christ follower, wife, mother, and founder of the Freedom Brigades. She's also the state chairwoman for the Oklahoma GOP. And the Freedom Brigades is a movement that began during COVID when a small town tried to implement a curfew, and a handful of people just decided that they were not going to sit back and watch local control disappear without a fight. And what they started there did not stay there. Charity and her team began coordinating with other groups, building structure, and training people in the process, ultimately establishing disciplined local leadership. And today, Freedom Brigades has expanded into multiple states with statewide brigades, county level structure, and a serious commitment to helping citizens understand how power actually works. And what especially stood out to me in my conversation with Charity previously is that her work is not built on big outrage. It's built on planning, structure, local intelligence, process, and follow through. And so for 2 years, they met virtually every Thursday, practicing, the steps needed to engage meaningfully. And ultimately, Charity, I'd love to start at the beginning from Freedom Brigades getting started in a moment when a small town tried to implement the curfew to now, what did that moment reveal to you, and how did that shape your journey to where you are today?
Perfect. Well, I did want to clarify the 2 years that were spent where we were meeting virtually. That was the effort to take back the Republican Party, right? I'm
Mm,
apologize. And so that was very much needed, and we need to talk about that because taking back the Republican Party is how we're going to take back the Republic. I think that's the vehicle we have to do it in, but we also have to take back our communities. And so, how it started, and alluding to what you said, is I live in a little town in northeast Oklahoma, Veneta, Oklahoma. You can look this up in the news. Veneta wanted to do what many other towns were doing in the middle of COVID, and they were going to implement a curfew. The arguments at the city council where they talked about this were you can't have a curfew. That's illegal. We're adults. You can't tell us we're not going to be out after, I think it was 7 o'clock. I'm not sure if it was 7 or 9. And basically, their only argument was, well, this is a pandemic. Other towns are doing it, bigger cities are doing it, and we're going to do it too. And so when they implemented this curfew, we sued them. Very, very interesting. We never saw a day in court. There was never even an answer to the petition to the court. They just immediately called a city council meeting and pulled back the curfew. 72 hours. The curfew was over because they knew they did not have a legal leg to stand on. What is horrifying about this story is how many places did an illegal curfew get implemented because nobody stood up. The people don't understand the power they have, they don't understand what the Constitution says, and we have to be willing to stand up and push back. Our elected officials are accountable to us, and for too long we have bought the lie that we just have to do what they say because they're the governing authority. That is not the case. And so they are being held to a standard and they work for us, and we need to get that mentality. And so I was working with the local Republican Party and looking around and realizing that, okay, all of these COVID measures, first of all, are insane. I really didn't want to get involved in politics. I had quit my job to homeschool my kids. My husband and I were like, this is how we'll live on one income, just because we already saw what was happening in the schools. And then COVID hit right at the same time they stole an election that was so obvious in front of our face. It was like a bully pushing your face in the dirt saying, what are you going to do about it? We know that you know, and we don't care. You're going to go ask questions. Okay, well, we're going to J6 it now. We're going to make that an example to the rest of you to sit down and shut up. So I'm like, crap. And then I'm watching the swamp creatures defend this behavior. And I'm like, I have to jump in the swamp. We have to clean this up or we're going to lose the country completely. So I jumped in the middle of it. And when I started getting involved in the local party, I realized we needed to have a man at every post because the enemy is coming in like a flood right now. And so we needed one person going to every city council meeting, another one going to every county commissioner, another one going to school boards, another one going to the library boards. If there is a government meeting, we're trying to make sure somebody is there. And we're at war. We have been infiltrated. So if you agree to work this post, you need to be there. If your kid has a game, there are other ball games. If you really need to get to that game or you are sick, you have somebody else man your post. Because when people first start showing up to these meetings, the first thing they say is, well, who are you? What are you doing here? Who are you reporting back to? They are largely used to us being asleep and the government entities just doing what they want. We even have a situation where in Claremore, where they weren't even allowing enough room. Some of them have had city councils where they in buildings where they didn't have a public restroom. That's purposeful to keep us out. That's it's unheard of what we're putting up with, and I think our founding fathers expect us to stand up and take it back. And so with the brigades, we started taking back our community, and other communities said, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, great. So we started implementing it in other communities. And then we host these calls once a month where the brigade leaders get on across each state that's doing it and they say this is what's happening in our state, and we are collaborating information and collaborating efforts. In Oklahoma, we have successfully pushed back the wind farms, the industrial wind turbines coming in several places. We haven't been able to stop it in all of them, but our effort of coming together has stopped it in some places, and we've slowed it in many. The biggest thing we're dealing with in Oklahoma is this green energy crap because we have all this farmland. And so we're fighting them on that level. But then I was working with America's Frontline Doctors with Dr. Simone Gold. I was working on their legal team. That's the area of study that my degrees are in. And I was telling her about this at lunch, and she was like, we got to do this nationwide. And so the brigades went nationwide through the frontline doctors for a while. At what point we decided to amicably split our ways simply because I was getting into very political realms and they are a 501c3 that just did not make sense for them to continue to partner with us. So they still point to us and we still work to them and they're still a resource for the brigades, but the brigades went out on their own in 2023 because it was growing into something more political. And we used that structure to take back the Republican Party in Oklahoma. We went to the counties and found patriots in the counties that would be willing to take back their Republican Party, and we helped them learn the procedure. This is what you're talking about, where for
Yep.
2 years we met. So on every Thursday night, we held training on parliamentary procedure. And we helped them, okay, if this is what you want to do, this is how you can do it. And we just equipped them to do what they wanted to do in their county. And once we had taken back the majority of the counties, well, and you do that by deciding who you're going to run for chair, who you're going to run for vice chair, state committee, and those positions. Then all of a sudden at the state committee, we had the majority and we had the majority at convention. And so when I say we, I mean patriots. One thing in the Republican Party especially is we've got this attitude of the newbies. And people like myself, some have come in when Charlie Kirk died, some came in during the COVID and the stolen election, but we came in like a force, and those that have been holding the line forever were like, well, who do you guys think you are? You haven't done your time. And then the newbies come in and say, well, you must be part of the problem because you've been sitting here and this is the mess that's here. And so, what I have asked both sides is for the ones that have been holding the line, be thankful that the army that you wanted is here because we've got to take back the country. The real fight is the Democrats. And to the newbies, be thankful they were holding the line while you just went to work and stayed home and watched TV. And now you're in the fight. So be grateful somebody was holding the line so you have a Republican Party. Now, that being said, there are swamp creatures in the Republican Party that do not hold any of the same values. They say they do, but then their actions show differently. And so those are the people we have to get rid of, but there's really very few of them. Many of them in the Republican Party just followed someone that they didn't see through. They didn't realize how dishonest this person they've been following is. So if you can take out some of the leadership, the ones that are thieves and liars, if you can get rid of those, most of them are people you can work with, and we're going to need everyone to fight back.
Mm. That's such a beautiful explanation of the journey that you had to go through to get to where you are today. And I think a lot of people listening, if they haven't been engaged in politics, might struggle to grasp the degree to which and the number of people impacted in the very short synopsis of what you shared, right?
Sure.
And I think ultimately it reveals how quickly citizens can lose ground when they're not organized and how quickly they can gain it back once they've decided to get organized, right? And not just
Sure.
organize, but actually take action, be visible, try and fail, and someone has to drive a vision. And I love too that you've shared that this vision and how starting small really does compound, right? Not just in relationships and in business, the compound effect, right? But we can influence politics extremely powerfully through that. And I think too, there's this middle ground here. It feels like where you know there's the alt right, there's the alt left, um, and ultimately, they don't represent, I think, the majority of either party, now. And so there's that 80% in the middle that really feel politically homeless. And we already know that the Democrats, they're very, very entrenched. I mean, look at Tulsi Gabbard's interviews, and she'll tell you about the mafia style that they run their party with. But what would you say to those individuals in the middle, where they are constitutionally minded, they truly are patriots? I think we all have our own experiences with party politics, right? But where do you see the greatest grounds for hope, to your point, for patriots and truly constitutionally minded citizens to take back the Republican Party across the country?
I think it's important that we focus on the enemy, because the enemy does what he always does. So the real enemy, this is a spiritual battle. We're just fighting it out on a political battleground, right? When you introduced me, the first thing you said was a follower of Christ, and I asked that go first because I'm very purposeful with that being what's happening, right? As you're getting into this space, I am watching people change. I'm watching them lose families. Pride gets involved. Pride was the first sin and continues to be the one that kills us the most. And so, how you combat that is to stay in the Word of God. Every day, the Bible says that if you read that every day, it will give you discernment and show you the intentions of the heart. And I believe that means other people's hearts and your own heart. So you can see in yourself when you are getting off track, and when you're talking to someone, you can discern if they're a snake. And I just, you have to do that as you're walking into this space. And then you need to remember who the real enemy is. The real enemy is using people. And so the enemy is anyone that is going to hurt our way of life. For instance, we had a person that stole a lot of money from the party before I became the state chairman, and I am paying off what was negotiated down to $200,000 in FEC fines because of money that they spent irresponsibly. Right? They say, "Oh, we just didn't give the receipts." Bull, you spent it on stuff you shouldn't have done, and you stole, and whatever. And so now we're left holding the bag, and you're walking away without even whatever. That is something worth getting angry over, but is not worth blowing the house up over. Okay, because the people that are coming in trying to tell our kids you really don't know what kind of gender you are, and taking babies and mutilating them, right? Allowing Islam to come in a big way that is totally antithetical to everything that we believe in, to our Constitution, to our way of life, that would totally make slaves out of women and children and make us nothing more than objects, along with enslaving all of the men as well. That kind of thing, that is the enemy. China coming in, buying all of our farmland so that they can also take over. These are the things we need to fight. So the things that are worth getting mad about are still worth getting mad about and fighting on the side as you can, but that can't be the main focus. And I think what's happening is we lose sight of who the real enemy is because there's a lot of other things that are righteous to be angry about. But we are in a war and we do not get the luxury of deciding whether or not we like the person next to us or we agree with them or we think they're a good person. If you are going to fight gender ideology against kindergartners with me, I'm going to fight alongside you. If you are going to stop pornography in our schools, I will fight alongside you. I don't care if I like you. We need to get there because that is where we're at. So that's what I would say to the 80%. In Oklahoma, I just started this program a few months ago to kind of vet the primary candidates, right? And so it's to be certified in Oklahoma from the Republican Party, you have to meet 5 criteria. You have to be strong on the gun rights because in Oklahoma, we care a lot about that. I can carry a gun in my purse. I don't have a permit. I don't need permission, anything other than the Second Amendment. That we care about that. The other thing is you have to be really strong against abortion. Oklahomans very much care about that as well. And as a follower of Christ, that's a hill I'm willing to die on. The other thing is you can't have given to a Democrat for 5 years. You can't have been any other party for at least 5 years. And that's actually kicked a few of our guys out. That shows the rhinos, right? And then you say you can't be a Democrat 3 years ago and run as a Republican and be certified. We're not going to get behind that. The other thing is, though, is the point you were talking about, is we make them fill out a survey. And it is a platform survey. So it covers every issue in our platform. And if they have to agree with at least 80% of it to be certified. Now, there are extremists that would say, well, why didn't you make it a higher percentage? Because if you agree with me on 80% of the issues, you can fight alongside me. We have to get to where it's okay if we disagree on the stuff that is not that important. If we disagree on abortion, that's one of the criteria. That to me, that's not something we can get past. But on the other stuff, we can. One of the things that's coming out is very real information on 5G, right? It is very harmful. There's a lot of things that it is not good for us. But I don't think that's something that we can hold against lawmakers right now. We have so many bigger issues. If you are aware of the 5G issue, there are steps you can take to protect your family and yourself. But that is not a part of the bigger war right now. We have things that are even more detrimental. That's down the road. And we've got to be able to prioritize what's most important to what's not most important, or we are not going to lose. That's strategy. And so quit getting caught up on the things that they matter. It's not that it's not true, and it's not that it's not right. I should be furious that I'm paying off FEC fines for such irresponsibility and theft. But I can't get focused on that because I got bigger issues to deal with, and we need to remember that. What the real enemy is coming against America. Let's focus on that and fight together.
Absolutely. And I think, for those that maybe haven't taken a step to be in the political and civic arena, there's a few things happening where either, well, first of all, people's attention spans are like goldfish, right? And because everything in social media and conversations that are being had are very tied to this national news cycle. And sometimes there are big issues in various states, whether it be the Muslim communities and the developments that they're making in Texas and other places across the country where, it comes and goes so quickly. And people could be really upset about that. But then they also think to themselves, well, like, this is such a big issue. Someone's doing something about it, right? Um, Not realizing that sure there could be people saying things, but who's actually organizing, right? And what I love with the Freedom Brigades is that they didn't just stop with one local fight. Building the brigades and the bridges across the counties and states. What did you learn about what it takes to actually build real civic infrastructure and actually assigning people to influence points rather than just asking for generic involvement?
So I think that people understand our house is on fire and they don't know what to do about it. It's overwhelming to them. And so it's to give a sustainable plan and say, look, here is your part. They can do that. Like the brigades cost 4 hours a month of your time, right? It's 2 hours to go to the civic meeting that you're going to, and then 2 hours to go to your brigade meeting. And I'm including drive time in that. 4 hours a month of your time to take back your community. I think when we break it down to something that's biteable, people are eager to do that. What I have learned is that the cost of freedom is you. The Lord says that we are to be living sacrifices, and what it takes is your time. And it takes your time. I remember when we were taking back the GOP, and we'd be having all these late night meetings. We'd have a strategy meeting of, okay, which roles do we do first? How do we do the motions? We would assign people, you do the motion and you do the second, just trying to get things and get organized. And then we're doing the parliamentary training and all of the things. I was in meetings every evening, and my husband was like, why is it in the evenings? I'm like, because the Patriots work. That's when they're home. And so people were giving up their evenings for years to take back the party. And we've taken back the party in Oklahoma. I wouldn't be the chair if we didn't, right? Because the establishment wouldn't have voted for me, although I have been able to build bridges with many of them as they realize that I'm just trying to help the country. I'm not trying to burn them down. Um, but it takes your time. And, saying that though, I have also seen people get divorced. I have seen people lose themselves. As you get into this space, and it does require your time, it requires more than what you're giving. You do have to have boundaries and set. I try not to do anything on the weekends and make that for my family because you have to be very purposeful with your time. As you jump into this space, be purposeful with your time. God gave you your family. God gave you your marriage. The order is your spouse and then your kids. And that's the way God designed it. God, spouse, kids. And so if you aren't purposeful with your time, you will lose that too, and you will also burn out. And so it's just, it costs your time and you have to be purposeful. You have to make sure you're having time for your family and yourself, but you also have to understand that it's going to cost the other time. You probably are going to lose most of your entertainment, and it's worth it. When you get, I tell people when you go to the very last day of your life, look back. What do you wish you would have done? Do that. You have time left to do that. We're all going to go to heaven one day and stand before our Father in heaven, and you're going to give an account of what you did. And if you spent more time watching movies and the TV and you let the country go instead, you will deeply, deeply regret it. It's costing our time.
So, so powerful. And, at the time of this recording, Memorial Day has just passed.
Yes.
And, I'm someone who I enlisted in the Marines. I processed through MEPS, and then I got very, very sick, diagnosed with a chronic condition, could no longer serve in the military, right? And, again, with Memorial Day just passing, and so many across the country reminding themselves and seeing everywhere, the sacrifice in service
Hmm.
that so many before us have made.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people love this country. They consider themselves to be a patriot, but they don't think about the sacrifice that they could make, right? You don't just have to honor other people's sacrifice. You have the option to make a sacrifice now to, in the same way, right? Preserve everything that those before us did as well. Um, and so I love that you share that as well as setting the boundaries, right? And I think that that speaks to the power of a plan. And you can't always rely on other people's plans, right? You have to have an individual plan first, to draw those boundaries, to get your family on board, make sure everyone's moving in the same direction. And then you can grow from there into either being leader of your own group and formulating a plan for others to follow, or joining an established organization like Freedom Brigade, to come alongside them, see what they've already been doing, and where you can, provide additional guidance, resources, and just
Right.
support your time. One of the things that we connected on strongly in our previous conversation was the importance of understanding where real local authority and accountability live. And I love that you brought it up first, but the role of a county sheriff, right?
Yes.
And so, why do you think so many people misunderstand, particularly local offices?
So I think that that just goes to, first of all, our education system, right, is not educating people. And then the news cycle focuses on the national. So people think, oh, the president. And I'm grateful that we have Trump. Even those of you that are not happy with Trump, remember we could have had Kamala. Quit complaining. This is the way it needed to go. But while he has given us protection up here, we need to be running the ground game down here, and we have to do that. Um, During COVID, it showed that your sheriff had more say over you than your president. The county commissioner is your operations comptroller for the whole county. Do you know that there is not a dollar spent in your county that your county commissioner doesn't sign off on? That is not just roads. I mean, people think it's, people don't understand it. Here in rural Oklahoma, they were fighting over which one had a high school diploma of the county commissioners, and I'm like, oh Lord, this is the comptroller for this for the county, and people don't understand. Who your local officials are. They're going to decide who comes into your community. They're going to decide what laws are allowed in your community. And so, I think it's powerful. We have to do that. I shared with you that personally, and I hope I'm wrong. I have friends that disagree with me. Tom Renz disagrees with me, so that gives you hope, right? There's people that are kind of pessimistic, and he disagrees with me. On this point, but I think that the republic has fallen, and I don't think it gets back up. I don't think we're going to save the whole republic. I do think we can save pockets of it, communities, possibly even states. And so I'm optimistic for saving Oklahoma. I'm not done trying to save the whole republic, and I will keep trying. But I do think that we have to focus on our communities because we can say, no, the line is here. We're supposed to be sovereign states, not federal territories. The whole idea, really, if you look back to our forefathers, they always said these United States, these United States. And then there was some propaganda that came out that we have all bought into, and it is the United States. And so we're looking at us as one big federal system that has territories rather than sovereign states, which is what we still are, but it's up to the people to decide that we're going to implement that. And so, one thing, and I can't let it go without mentioning, as we've taken back the Republican Party, because I really do believe that is the best vehicle to take back the country, is in Oklahoma, we're even going to have people doing the brigade structure statewide, and we have different people watching every legislative committee, the House, all the different House committees, all the different Senate committees. We have somebody watching, and then we come together and talk about it on Thursdays, and then we put a report out for the patriots that want to pay attention and say this is what's going on. Because in our legislature, things that are said on the House and Senate floor, they know people are going to hear, but they say things in the committees because that's where stuff gets swept under the rug. No longer. If the patriots will get organized and be active and be vigilant, nothing gets swept under the rug.
Oh, that is amazing. And, I talk about that a lot in my platform as well. A lot of people will show up for, the town hall meetings,
Yeah,
right? Or they'll look at the budget before then, not realizing, the planning committee meeting that happened before that. And oftentimes, so many decisions are already made
that's right.
before the policy ever hits the floor. Um, and I think it's particularly fascinating, and I appreciate you bringing up sovereign states because what I often say to people working with them one on one is, yes, you're a sovereign citizen. Sovereignty is given granted to us by God. It's written
Right,
into our Constitution, but it has to be exercised
right.
and recognized for it to really exist. Um, and so, with your position in the Oklahoma GOP, I want to touch a little bit more into the local county parties because
Okay.
I've had experience in Colorado. I'm now going through the experience of working to get introduced and, become a part of the Pennsylvania GOP. And I think that that's where a lot of really negative political experiences come from.
Mhm.
And so, how would you prepare attendees of the summit to walk into their local county GOP meeting with patience, grace, right? And again, just have a really good entry point while tempering their expectations as well.
Yeah, so go in expecting the best. That's in a situation you'll get farther. I feel like a Harry, sorry. Um,
Oh,
you will get a lot farther with anybody with honey. Go in expecting them to do the right thing and just assume they are. And unless they prove to you differently, just go in and show up. Now in Oklahoma, we had already realized who was who. We were paying attention in the counties and we knew which chairmen in the different counties were dishonest and which ones were not. The ones that were dishonest, for instance, I helped in a county where they simply did not hold their county convention the 2 years before, and the county chairman just decided to keep going. Well, that's illegal, but she just did it and she got away with it because no one called her out on it. And so I figured out it was in the town I grew up in, and it's not the one I live in now. And so I figured out how many come to that, um, to their convention, and we just showed up with more people. And then we put in our honest chairman, who is still the chairman there. She's serving her second term, and we have taken back the party that way. With ones that we can, as you go into your county, go in expecting to work. And if you realize that you can get something done, you may be able to work with these people because they're just people and not, most of them are not dishonest. If you find that the one you've got to work that you're working with is using this as a social thing, we can't do social clubs anymore. We'll lose the country. I'm not interested in that. And so the ones that just want it as a social club, that are not being honest, that are doing this as a prideful thing, then you need to figure out how you can come with more people to your next convention, and you need to keep it quiet until that convention so that they're surprised. And then you show up and you take back your county. It is most beneficial if you have a group like we did in Oklahoma that went around and helped you do that. If you reach out to me at charity@freedombrigades.com, I will send you. We have done some videos on parliamentary procedures that will help you take back. And so we will help you do that. And we will even work one on one. It's free to join the Freedom Brigades. Nobody is making money on this. Matter of fact, it costs me money most of the time. We've got to get past it being about us. And so everything is free. Let's just take back the republic. If we are, the people that are trying to monetize on that, it's hard to live without a living. And so I don't get on them for that. And you should donate to places that are doing stuff as you can. But we can't require that of people because right now they're squeezing out the middle class, right? People don't have it, and we've got to take back the republic, so that can't be a requirement. So we don't ask anything of you. If you want our help, we will help you do that. I do think we have to take back the Republican Party, and I'm seeing this in other states, North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, even in was Wisconsin. The Patriots are taking back the party, and there's a few others. Arkansas is seeing some movement, so is Missouri, where Patriots are taking it back, and that is a God-led movement. We've helped a few of them on the side, but they reached out to us because they were already frustrated. God is leading this movement across our republic, but we can't just pray, right? Faith without works is dead. We have to pray and act.
Wow, I love that. And I appreciate all of the resources that Freedom Brigade has already created, already makes available. And I think it really fits the gap, like you said, the failure of the education system
Yeah.
to give the citizens what they need to function at the most basic levels of government, right? Um, and so it's fantastic that you have those resources available for people to fit in that gap. And then also I hope that that inspires people to grow into the next level, right? What's the transformation that needs to happen to take you from now, from concerned citizen to competent citizen with your resources, but now from competent citizen to dynamic local leader, right? Because I think that there's a transformation journey that has to happen there for people to truly step up and lead for the long term, right? Not just for the
Sure.
short-sighted, but again, to be there for the next fight too.
Well, I think first of all, as we move forward, we need to remember that we are fighting for what's best and for the voice of the people to be heard. So I have seen people get caught up on their issues. We need to be careful when we're leading that I am not out to just, like I already announced, abortion was my issue. I'm not out just to make sure I stop abortion. That is not what I'm doing as the GOP. What I'm doing is making sure the majority of the people's voice are heard. And right now, the majority of the Republicans in Oklahoma agree with that. But we need to make sure that we're being principled and we are not doing any favors. Otherwise, we're no different than the establishment that we're replacing, right? So you got to keep the mindset that this is about principle. This is not about people you like. This is not about you. This is about the principle of this still being in the power of the people and what that looks like and what we can do to facilitate that. As you move, it's like anything else. You just take one step at a time, and before you know it, you're walking, right? So you just start going to your meetings, right? Get a few people together. Let us know at Freedom Brigades. We'll help you get that together. You'll get a few people, and you just keep going to a few meetings, and you meet together once a month. All of a sudden, that's 3 steps you're taking every month. And before you know it, you're walking. What we have found with the Freedom Brigades is that as people are sitting in these meetings, they are less intimidated by the government and by the office. And a lot of times they've ended up running for office themselves, which we greatly need patriots in office. And so it's not something that you set out to do. When I first started this, I had didn't even think I would ever be the chairman of the state party. Wasn't interested in that, was just trying to save my little piece of the state. And so, you're just going to end up where God wants you anyway. But you do that by putting one foot in front of the other. Before you know it, you're walking, and where that leads you is where it leads you. And you'll be okay with it because by the time you get there, you'll have been walking. You'll be ready for that step.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today at Charity. I think you just perfectly summarized the hope factor aspect of our entire conversation. And
Great.
I do want to encourage those watching the summit and this session particularly to see this as inspiration that you truly can lead from where you live.
That's right.
And before you move on to the next conversation, I want to remind you that if this session was valuable, you don't have to lose access to it when the summit window closes. You can upgrade to the VIP Summit Pass, which gives you lifetime access to all the summit recordings, plus exclusive bonuses just for such time as this. Because these conversations are meant to be revisited. And the more you return to them, the more clearly you'll see where you can take responsible citizen action on the issues that you care about most.
A republic, if you can keep it. Thank you for joining the Engaged Citizen Summit.